While many scraps in my shop go unused, I had an idea for these. These scraps were 1.5 inches thick, so I cut them into strips 1.5 inches square. That resulted in this pile of 1.5 inches square pieces. Next came gluing them into 7-piece panels. I used Gorilla Glue throughout this project, so according to their directions, I've dampened one side of each joint and then spread glue on the other side. Gorilla Glue has a long open time. It makes this a lot easier. I just lay a strip on and then smooth it out with a piece of scrap. And I repeated that process with each subsequent piece. While assembling these panels, I turned the end grain 90 degrees to the one that came before it to enhance the checkerboard effect. And I put the assembly in clamps, made sure that they were very flat on the bars, and put a little pressure on them and let them sit overnight. The next day I just scraped away the excess glue that foamed out of the joints. This is one of the things that I really like about Gorilla Glue. Next I want to flatten the panels in my planer. No matter how careful you are, one side will be flatter than the other side. I find the side that goes through the planer without rocking, and we use that on the table to start with. And we'll take a very light cut, just enough to flatten the piece out. Then after this side is flat, we can turn it over and flatten the other side. Because I took my time when gluing these panels up and only needed one pass on each side to true them up. Then it was back to the table saw to true up the edges. I cut one edge, readjusted the fence, and took a cleanup cut on the other edges to make sure they're parallel. I clamped a stop block to my table saw sled, setting 1.5 inches from the blade. Then we can just move the panel over till it touches the stop, make the cut, pull it back, remove that strip, and keep repeating the process until we have all of our strips cut. The strips had just a small little burr along the cut edges, and just hit it with a sanding block, 1 or 2 swipes, and that's gone. Now we dampen one side of the joint and apply glue just like we did making the panels, only this time the end grain goes up. When putting this glue up in the clamps, I took my time and tried to keep the edges just as perfectly aligned as possible. This effort now saves a lot of time later on when we're squaring this blank up. I like to use a dead blow mallet just to make sure that all of the strips are down flat against the bars. And we apply a little pressure and let them sit overnight and dry. Common sense says to just sand these pieces flat, but I've got a Powermatic planer with a bird head in it, and I just had to give this a try. I took a very light cut and used a slower feed rate. As you'd expect, there was some chipping on the trailing edge as it came out from the planer. But while it looks bad, all of the chipping is less than 1/8 of an inch deep, and we take more than that off just making a cleanup cut. All of this chipping should disappear when we square this blank up. Back at the table saw sled, we'll take a light cut off all the sides to square it up. And you can see here that chipping that we got from the planer is gone. The planer did a good job of flattening these pieces out. There's still a bunch of sanding to get them nice and smooth. I started with 80 grit paper and worked my way up to 320. Just before changing to the 320 grit paper, I rounded all of the corners with a 3/8 inch diameter roundover bit. Last came applying 3 coats of mineral oil. I let each coat soak in 2 or 3 hours before applying the next one. After the third coat, I let the piece sit overnight and use a clean rag to wipe off any excess. The piece is then ready to be used.